You've said that the creative player is the player of the future. What do you
Mhm.
mean by that? Joel, welcome to the Strong Female Athlete podcast.
Thank you, Erica. Good to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this discussion because found you on X, I think, a few months ago, and you were posting all this research on creative players. And I saw one of your threads, you had a Ronaldinho video, and I'm like, wow, I grew up watching him, and I haven't seen a player like him in a while. So I
Right.
started going through all of your research and threads, and it just really resonated with me. And I think my audience is going to need to hear your message today because a lot of soccer players, especially in the United States, are becoming very robotic. There's a lot of rehearsed
Mm.
training. So this is going to be awesome. But maybe you can just give an update on your work and who you're working with currently where you're at.
Okay. Yeah. So I work at an international school in Korea, and I teach high school PE there. But I also coach. I coach hockey and volleyball, and am an author as well. I wrote a book called Seoul Ambition, and a lot of this creativity research came from that first book. And I was first looking at it from the stereotypical side of East Asian students lack creativity, and I was looking at how that bleeds into things like soccer. So came across this whole world of creativity research, and I was kind of swept up in it. It just really spoke to me. So it's something that I've just independently been researching for a few years now, and has become a passion.
Awesome. Well, what really sparked that passion? Were you starting to notice a decline in creative players? I know you've mentioned it's becoming rare nowadays.
Right. So I think what really connected for me was I'd written the book about Korean athletes, and it was kind of an examination of what's happening over here and how it's pretty unique. So, Korea, the academic pressure is very high. And what actually happens is if you want to get involved in athletics, it becomes kind of this pathway that you choose. You cannot do academics and athletics at a high level at the same time. So it's kind of like it branches off. You either choose academics or you choose athletics. And it makes this kind of race to the bottom of all these people competing to get on these teams, and to get a spot on the athletic track that can eventually lead to things like university scholarships. So I was doing this research and then also looking at how the training's usually done here. It's usually very coach led, it's usually very hands on, and it's kind of this like blueprint that you should be following, and linearly moving along this development pathway. And I began to see how that limited creativity here. But then I also started to connect how that's also the way the Western world's moving. We're moving to this more hands on, younger and younger. Coaches are trying to move kids along on these linear steps in the coaching world. So it became something that I think we're going to see more and more of in North America and Europe.
So we'll talk about how we're going to solve all this and what parents and coaches can do, but can you break down what really defines a creative player and just some of their attributes?
Yeah. So when we talk about creativity, this comes from, I like to call him the king of creativity research. His name's Daniel Maymert. He's a German academic, but he's got this concept of tactical creativity. So tactical creativity is like doing something rare, surprising, something that's really different, usually makes the fans go, wow. But it's also known as divergent thinking. So it's like a process of thinking that is new and different. So, like a typical thing in sports for this would be the Magic Johnson's no look pass. That's something that just wasn't in the game before, and it's very hard to predict. And he just played with defenders for years. So when we talk about creativity, first we're talking about it in a sense of like attacking offensive play, usually in team sports or racket sports. And it's kind of balanced against this idea called tactical intelligence. And tactical intelligence is convergent thinking. It's like thinking inside the box. In the sport world, it's like making the smart play, making the effective play. A lot of players can be tactically intelligent without being creative. But the best in the world are really high on the spectrum of both. They're creative and they're intelligent. And then when it comes to creativity, usually when you go in and analyze it, it has three main components. The first is originality. Is it something new? Is it something rare? Is it something that's atypical that happens? And then the second one is fluency. And that's the idea of like, does it work? Does it beat a defender? Does it trick a defender? Does it lead to a goal? And then the last one is it flexible? Do you have one set move that you do over time? Because if so, that's not really creative. You have to have this large array, this big toolbox of different moves that you can go to, so you're unpredictable.
I love that, and I like that you talk about the tactical side of it because I think
Mhm.
when people think of creative players, it's just the flashy moves like
Right,
Ronaldinho's
right.
doing, and I actually was thinking about the total football concept that the Dutch
Mhm.
became famous for, where they kinda interchange positions on the field and players weren't really married to their position, and like you said, that's surprising for the defenders, and I
Right,
think that
right.
tactical piece is huge. Now, I don't know if it's this way where you are, but a big thing in the States here for soccer training is a lot of unopposed skills training. And I just want your perspective on it and what you've kind of seen in your research that it might have its place, but can true acquisition really shine in those tactical settings? And is that what we should be leaning more towards with youth?
Right. So it's a big resounding no for me that unopposed training, the transfer, like the learning transfer into games, is going to be really low. And a reason that is, if you think about like ball handling and reading a defender, all of it is done through mental processes where you're looking at the cues of the defender. You're watching when they commit to you. You're seeing the gap and using the gap to go around them. I'm not going to say there's zero place for something like ball handling, but opposed games, especially done in a fun way, are really where creativity is born from.
Oh, a lot of parents listening are be like, "Man, all we're doing is unopposed training." It is so popular in the States, and I don't know how active you are on, like, Instagram and all these
Yeah,
platforms, but there's a lot of skills training accounts with huge followings where it's all unopposed, "Hey, run
yeah,
through these cones, dribble here," and everyone's doing it in the States,
yeah.
and I just really wonder, is this really holding our kids back because like you said, it's the transfer's not there with the decision making piece of this.
Right. And yeah, it's something that I've become kind of a large proponent against, just trying to talk sense into people, and that if you can make it opposed, you should be making it opposed in all practice activities.
Yeah. You know, there's very few technical trainers I trust in the world. I don't know if you know Todd Bean, but I'm
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
a huge fan of
Total
his.
football. Yeah,
Yeah, huge fan because a lot of people would argue, oh, for the younger ones, you only need like the ball handling unopposed. But he argues, no, you can teach these kids in those small sided games how to have sharp technical skills. And as long as it's set up correctly and you pause at the right times, they can really learn and it's more exciting for them.
right. Yeah, so like I was teaching or coaching young kids in hockey this year, and there's something called task simplification, where you can still you do oppose things, but I had the defenders flip their sticks around, so they're not playing with a blade and the hockey stick. They're still, they can use their skates and they can use the top of their stick, but it's a way of if the kids are less skilled, you can simplify things. Uh, so they still have to read all those cues and get by a defender, but they're not just stick handling around a cone or an inanimate object.
Yeah. That's really great. Now, for the parents listening, do
Mhm.
you recommend they have their young athlete work with a technical trainer in that small group setting who's doing the skill work within the small sided games?
Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Free Lap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Free Lap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Free Lap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
I believe that there's more valuable things that you can be doing, especially when you gotta have to take into account the age of your players. So kids age 6 to 13 are kind of in this window of development for creativity when it comes to developing a creative side. And the key to that is there's some research that found that after 13 years old, creativity just begins to stagnate and it begins to kind of level off. It still can be learned, but it can't be learned as much. So the skills trainer, as much as they're trying to convince you, is not a must. And I think there's a lot more accessible things that you can be doing that are cheaper and more fun to be doing as well.
Yeah, that fun component's so key, and we talk a
Mhm.
lot about fun on the podcast because the reality is we want kids looking forward to training and staying in sport as long
Right.
as possible. So yeah, that's huge. Now, what about your thoughts on free play? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, kids need to get outside more. We need to do free play." And I've seen some of your stuff on free play, but just want you
Yeah.
to get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, so for me, this has become the greatest area that I think we need to bring back. So there's been a shift over the last 30 years. Compared to when I grew up, you generally would get into a sport a little more organically. You'd be playing with neighborhood kids and test it out and play a lot of informal games. And that has kind of gone away for multiple reasons. Cell phone and technology use is one of them. Shifts in parent mentality and having less trust of being out in the neighborhood alone. But free play there's a number of studies, a whole slew of research studies linking it to more creative thinking, both in sport and outside of sport. Um, and Often more creative athletes, especially elite football players, they get the same level of practice as their less creative peers. But the one big thing that's differing how they were developed as kids was the amount that they played in the streets, the amount that they played in the schoolyard. So free play to me is one of the most underutilized um, things that kids can be doing.
Now, I've seen some of your tweets on early specialization and the research
Hmm.
there, and there's a ton of research on it. And still, there's people saying that, oh, it's fine to do it, and everyone's justifying their decisions because I think that's just the world parents are living in now, whether they like it or not. But let's talk about early specialization.
Okay, yeah. So early specialization has become something that is, yeah, I think a lot of parents involved are not necessarily uh, pushing their kids into this. It's more just the way that the social environment is formed now. It's the thing that you need to do just in order to keep your kid in sport and keep them at the level that they're at. But there's a number of interesting studies that show that if you focus on one sport, so when we talk about early specialization, it's getting a lot of practice reps in one sport and not really paying attention to playing anything else. If you're going to go out and play soccer, you only focus on soccer. Uh, a lot of these athletes who do that tend to peak when they're in their junior years. So they tend to get the most skilled by the age of 16, and then they kind of taper off in their skill development. And the people who are passing them are the classic late bloomer crowd. They're the crowd that has played more sports when they were younger, and they show kind of less progress at first, but their ceiling ends up being much higher. Patrick Mahomes is an excellent example of that. He was, a baseball player in up until university. He was a point guard in basketball in high school, and you can see that in his play. And he's one of my, creative heroes because he just brings this totally different aspect to playing games. So multiple sports is something that it seems like a disadvantage at first, but in the end, it actually ends up helping you more and more.
I'm really glad you brought up late bloomers because in the end, they usually tend to come around. And I think sometimes when parents are going through that where their child is the smallest or maybe the slowest, it causes a lot of panic. They're like, oh my gosh, we didn't hit the lottery here. But I like comforting parents of late bloomers that it's
Mhm.
okay. Just focus on getting them exposed to a variety of things, working on their technical development. And they usually come around in the end. So I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up.
Yeah.
And
And also,
also, oh, go
it's just
ahead.
the simple concept of like athleticism and creative gameplay in general comes from a broad base. Uh, if your base is super narrow and your focus is super narrow, it's going to be limiting. It comes from a broad base, but building up that broad base and bringing it back, you're eventually going to focus on one sport when you're older. It does take time, and just having patience is key in that. Yeah.
Now, in terms of early specialization, have you looked into any of the research of like serious injuries manifesting when athletes are older? I think I saw something the other day that the rise in ACLs could potentially be what they didn't do in their childhood. And they are kind of playing on this poor
Right.
foundation of motor skills. Is there something there? Have you researched that?
Yeah, the early specialization is like two big red flags come out. One is overuse injuries. When you do specialize on a sport, younger and younger, overuse injuries are way more of a risk. Classic one here is like Tommy John surgery. That used to be for professional players. That's now for teenagers that started throwing curveballs in little league. Um, and so overuse injuries is a huge risk. And then the other thing with early specialization is burnout, and losing joy in the sport because you're focusing too much on it too early.
Now let's come back to the creativity piece and bringing that joy back. What
Yeah.
can coaches do to just really design their practices to
Mm.
inspire that creativity in their young athletes? Because there are a lot of coaches listening in.
Right. Yeah. So I think a big thing for coaches is it's a mentality and a culture that you set with your team. And behind that culture is the idea that less prescribed, especially from this age, from 6 to 13, is better. So Daniel Mambert has this whole line of research where he looks at this thing called deliberate coaching. And what the recommendation is, what the best case scenario is, you come up with a practice task that is game based, and he calls it a one dimension game. There's one kind of goal that you're supposed to focus on, or one phase of play, like finishing in the box or whatever it may be. And you just give instructions at the start. So you give very clear instructions at the start, and then as the practice task is happening, you let it play out. You let the kids make their decisions, and you can question them afterwards on the effectiveness of those decisions. But one of the worst things that you can do is stop drills or stop games as you go along and intervene in order to try to direct thinking. Um, so when coaches do that over and over, it leads to this thing called inattentional blindness. They stop thinking for themselves and they kind of get their horse blinders on and they begin to see the game in a very narrow way because that's what the coach is telling them the solution that they need to see.
Mhm.
So for coaches, it's uh, kind of developing this mindset of what can you pull off instead of what mistakes do you need to avoid. It is more of a promotion mindset, not a prevention mindset.
Now, in terms of small-sided game design, any ways you can manipulate to inspire quicker decision making and that creativity?
Yeah, first thing with small games, in order to improve or I guess make decision making and play with the aspect of time is just play with space. Uh, Generally, if kids are less skilled, you want to be playing on a wider space for small sided games. But the more skilled they get, the more you can pull that area in. And when they have a smaller area, they need to make quicker decisions. And again, it's about, intelligently designed small sided games where it's flowing at all times and kids are experimenting, they're making mistakes, um, but it's promoted that it's okay to make those mistakes in those games.
Yeah, that's a big one I hear, with kids just being more robotic and kind of freezing on the field is they're
Right.
so afraid of messing up, and like you said, I think that starts at the top. It
Yeah.
starts with that culture. So yeah, I guess how else can coaches encourage kids, "Hey, it's okay to take risks and make mistakes," and, 'cause I know so many kids are so afraid.
Right. So I think that starts in practice. That starts in training. You can't just expect it to happen in a game and have them deal with mistakes or failure in a game. It starts in training. And that comes from things just like one clear communication from a coach that this is going to be the culture of our team. Uh, Two, maybe explaining that mistakes are expected and if you're trying something new, that is, something to be rewarded. Um, and then also for coaches, I think a big one would be is not tying playing time to in-game mistakes. So if a player is trying to, take something that they were exploring with in training and pull it off in a game and it doesn't work, don't tie playing time to that. Don't pull them off for that mistake. Don't make them feel guilty about it. Um, it is unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it's youth sports, and that's what they should be doing.
I remember one of my coaches always told me with 1v1 since I was an attacker, just focus on getting in the 18-yard box. And if
Mm,
the ball gets taken away from you, it's got to go all the way down the field
right.
for the other
Yeah.
team to score. And that always stuck out in my mind. And the fact that he just said that simple thing, it's okay to take that risk, just go. I kept getting better and better at
Right.
those 1v1s, and I kept getting the confidence to do them, and then I
Right.
loved 1v1s.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a great coach, like, and somebody who has genuine trust in you too to make those decisions on your own.
Yeah, yeah. Now as far as, like, your Bundesliga research, I know you posted a lot about that. Can you fill the audience in on what you found in that research with the professional players?
Yeah, so this is a touchy one for the soccer community. There's a lot of
I saw.
pushback. Yeah, but it's the idea that similar to these late bloomers, players who end up playing at higher level Bundesliga soccer versus semi-professional actually end up focusing strictly on soccer at a later age. Um, and they are getting more diverse sports. They're getting more informal play. But again, they are seemingly having slow growth, and they're doing other things. But then when they finally do focus on soccer in their adult years, they're reaching a much higher skill level. Um, and yeah, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people in the soccer community. They really don't like that research study, but
Oh, I don't but why? I just don't understand why everyone just wants to justify the push for specializing early all the time.
right. So there's another pathway. It's kind of been a dichotomy before, early specialization or diversification. But there's another one called early engagement that's kind of popping up in research circles. And that's the idea that for soccer, you'd still, start soccer at 5 years old and play all the way through, but you're doing other things along the way. So you're doing structured training. You may be in an academy, but you may play recreational basketball on the side. Or you may be getting, 5 hours of free play with your friends all the time. So you're not only doing structured training, you're doing other kind of more free flowing things. Um, and I think for the soccer world, I tend to agree that that's probably a pretty effective pathway, just because the sport is just so unique with the coordination patterns, just with using your feet. It's something that's so unique to just that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people who make the argument with some of the European youth academies that actually do a really good job of making sure these kids who are playing soccer year round, they're getting that movement variety.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Sean Cummings doing good work, and there's like jungle gyms and gymnastics on the campus. So would you say that's probably the best model in today's early specialization
Yeah.
world?
So actually, there's a like I think it's Nottingham Forest that is actually going and now focusing less on soccer skills at a younger age and more on the movement piece.
Okay.
Um, One of the best, there's this concept called donor sports. Donor sports are like something that you can do when you're younger that's going to help you in that sport later on. And parkour is one of the best things that you can do, especially when it comes to things like soccer, basketball, or football, because you learn to move in a diverse way. And I believe a lot of the more kind of forward-thinking academies are doing more and more things like that, where they're challenging the kids to move in fun ways rather than skilling and drilling, ball skills at the under 8 stage or whatever it may be.
Now, to wrap this up, you've said that the creative player is the player of the future. What do you
Mhm.
mean by that?
Yeah, so this is an idea that I really feel strongly about in uh, the more information that is available, the more team systems that are going to become predictable. So we've seen it with video. Video is readily accessible now, right down to the youth level. You can analyze other teams' gameplay, and a really well prepared coach can watch that and plan for that. Uh, at the higher level, teams have analytics departments. They're seeing how teams play, and that's just going to become easier too with AI and how much that shows tendencies of teams. So, with all of that available, I strongly believe that individual creativity and flair is going to be how you become successful. And actually, there's a really interesting study that looks at Euro Cup versus and World Cup, and creativity is not only for the fans. Teams that are more creative and attack more creatively end up making it deeper in the tournament and winning more games. Um, And funny enough, they found that the most important time for creativity was the first assist, the primary assist. If that person brought out some very unpredictable move, they were more likely to score, and the team was more likely to win.
Oh, wow. No, that is really interesting with all the video and AI. I mean, you can study any team, so
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense that teams and individual players need to become unpredictable and have a library of moves and different tactical formations. So that's really interesting. Now,
Right.
for the parents listening, what piece of advice would you give them if they have a kid that's under the age of 13?
The first thing is I would set up in their sport a free play regular meeting time. Um, and I think what we're envisioning in free play is just sending kids away to be on their own. I think the important thing there to realize is you can still supervise kids, they can still be under parent supervision. The most important thing is there's no adult intervention, especially when it comes to gameplay. So if they're just allowed to play and they can go experiment, they can gain all that informal time just around a ball or in their sport or wherever it would be, it's super helpful. And what I would just recommend for a parent is, host it in your neighborhood and try to pull in teammates from your team. And if the parents ask, explain that it's actually one of the best ways that you can learn at this age. Um, and then another big thing I'd recommend for parents is don't fear the season off. Um, take a season off. It can be a time where you try out a new sport, but again, it may seem in the immediate moment that it's kind of counterproductive. But in the long run, it's something that teaches young athletes to move differently. It teaches them to think differently, and they end up becoming more unique and more gifted players in their target sport because of it.
I think that's such great advice. And when you're talking about scheduling like the free play dates, that's so amazing because they're going to benefit so much. But then at the same time, and I know a lot of parents are concerned about this, it saves a ton of money. The
Yeah.
the unopposed skills gurus in the States here are like $100 an hour. And it's like you're not really getting that much out of it. So I think that's a good place to end. And I think this conversation will get a lot of people thinking. And I definitely want everyone listening to follow Joel's work. I will leave his X in the caption below so you can just stay up to date with his research on creativity. It's so fascinating and it's truly exciting, the potential for this to be the future, like you said. So thank you for joining, Joel, and I'll see everyone next time.
All right. Thank you very much.